Nightline with Ted Koppel. From Jordan to Saudi Arabia, and from Washington, the UN, and Tel Aviv. As 0 hour approaches and the world holds its breath, Ted Koppel brings you an expanded edition of Nightline tonight.
And now we come to the crunch. A few months ago, when we wandered around this map talking about the origins of the conflict, nobody ever really thought there was going to be a war in this small place. But tonight, with all the threats on the table, the possibility of alliances breaking down with 1 million men concentrated on this very small place, sane men in insane circumstances, someone said, with weapons unlike anything the United States used or had used against it in Vietnam, including chemical weapons, there is a real sense of menace in the Middle East. And there doesn't appear to be any sanctuary. Americans, for example, in nominally rear areas such as Dhahran here on the Persian Gulf, or even in the Saudi capital of Riyadh, are within range of Iraqi missiles, however random those missiles may turn out to be over long distances. As the Allied troops inch their way forward tonight, there's a sense that neither side is as well prepared as it needs to be. Intelligence reports that Iraqis may not be as well dug in Kuwait because they spent the last 5.5 months hardening up their positions inside Iraq, just in case there's an American invasion. Some of America's best armor is still on the high seas being deployed from Europe to the front lines here, the increasingly lengthy front line where it will be needed. And the president is under enormous pressure to act. As for casualties, often it seems that analysts use the numbers from a few hundred Americans killed in action to 10,000 or more if the war drags on to support whatever political argument they are making about the military campaign. The Pentagon makes its own estimates, but none of us knows how bad they think it's going to be. Iraqis and Americans will die without question, and so they prepare. Here's ABC's Bill Reddick.
U.S. forces are moving by the thousands to the front.
You solemnly swear the answers you will give to the questions I'm about to ask will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
Are you Darren T. Carter, and are you Samuel Jackson, Jr.?
Yes, sir.
Have each of you read over your wills?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do each of you feel like you understand your wills?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do the wills accurately reflect how you want your estate administered and divided following your death?
Yes, sir.
Troops are coping with the reality of crossing the line.
Time I give you a thumbs up and we hit the line, it's showtime. You have 28 minutes. Anything past that is too late. Make sure you have that target identified and kill it.
Good enough right here.
This frontline Marine company has only minutes to destroy Iraqi tanks.
God damn it.
Staff Sergeant's got some lithium batteries if you want to go ahead and do it. Bust the battery case out of the vehicle. Tell Robertson to bust his battery case out. Hurry up.
While setting up their $8,000 missiles, the Marines are a prime target.
Yeah.
A successful hit means survival.
Yeah! Yeah, baby!
But nearly 1 out of every 3 missiles fails. Some don't fire at all, leaving the crew dangerously exposed to enemy fire.
Gotta get EOD. Let's get EOD up here. Jesus Christ. Okay, you got your son? Get your son. Okay, hold. Leave it there. Tell him we got a hang fire on this one. Tell him. Misfire! Bad missile. Get EOD up here. Misfire. Stay in the hole.
My first gunner either went over the target or had a problem with his missile. From what I saw, he probably had a problem acquiring the target. My second missile, rocket motors never kicked in on the second missile, so that's why you saw the missile about 50 feet out of the tube go tumbling across the ground. So now basically, if it was a real-life situation, tanks have already seen my missiles fired and everything. They know where my positions are at, and since I'm dug into the ground, I can't pick up 220 pounds and run somewhere, so basically my people and me are dead.
How does that make you feel?
As long as I die with them, so I don't have to write no letters to mamas.
I really don't think there's any way you can prepare somebody for the meat grinder. You know, just something that it's going to be faced.
Have you told your men what sort of casualties to expect in combat?
I've told them that they have to expect and prepare for casualties. They have to be ready to move on and take up a higher leader's position if necessary. But you know, again, unless you've actually been there, you just can't really begin to describe what I would envision as the horror.
American forces are pitted against an army that has 3 times as much artillery, twice as many tanks, attack helicopters, and a proven willingness to use chemical weapons. When was the last time the U.S. faced that kind of an enemy?
Well, I'm not so sure that the U.S. has ever faced anything quite like this before.
So what are we confronted with?
Well, you're talking about probably the most violent type of conventional clash that has ever existed in the history of warfare.
General Traynor witnessed Iraqis in action during the final stages of their 8-year war against Iran. They exploited an arsenal of modern Soviet artillery, French and Russian bombers and fighters. They were willing to take hundreds of thousands of casualties before their final assault.
This is not the kind of army that will fall apart after the first strike. No. This army has been seasoned by war, and it will show unyielding, stubborn resistance.
Marshal Akhromeyev knows the Iraqi command and is well acquainted with their Soviet weapons. He has told the U.S. military that Iraq's ammunition and supplies will last months.
The armed forces of Iraq consist of 700,000 men, 60 infantry divisions. Of course, if it starts, fairly quickly the Air Force of Iraq might be suppressed by anti-aircraft systems. That perhaps will be possible. But the infantry, 60 divisions, they will fight.
I used to be an officer in tanks, second lieutenant, and I served in the front for 3 months. After that, I got shot, and I've been captured by the Iranian, and I spent in captivity for 7 months as a POW, and then they released me after I'd been blinded.
Talal Salem moved to Michigan after commanding 3 Iraqi tanks in the war. He does not underestimate his former military colleagues.
I was there, and I know they were tough. They fought hard.
Do you think that Iraqi soldiers will give up their arms, cross the border, quit? Or will they fight?
I think they will fight.
Final scout report enemy activity in your area. Enemy troops, move out and destroy.
U.S. forces say they can cripple the Iraqi army within a month.
There's a lot of stuff sitting over on this side, and we put it over there. I don't think they're going to like it too much. I think he's going to have a lot of people quit.
A lot of people say, why not let the Air Force just do the entire job and take no casualties, and that's the end of it?
They can't do it.
I'm sorry?
They can't do it. That's a pipe dream from the Air Force. They won't admit it, but ain't no way in hell air power is going to knock out all the stuff they have. You got to have ground forces to do that.
They can do a lot of damage, but there's still going to be a lot of tanks, a lot of armor sitting on the ground that they're not going to get to, and it's going to take us to go in there and get them out.
They will go into what is being called a killing zone in Kuwait. Iraq's engineers have laced the front with mines, napalm trenches, and walls of sand embedded with tanks.
They will be difficult to breach because they built them along the same models that they did with the Iranians, with barbed wire mines, various obstacles, anti-tank obstacles, strong defensive positions in sequence, in great depth, all of them being supported with artillery and from adjacent positions. These will be very, very difficult, the sort of thing that we ran into in the Pacific battles in World War II.
The United States is relying heavily on more than 1,000 attack aircraft and bombers to strike into and behind enemy lines during the opening days of a war. They will use massive force to shock and disable Iraq. Pilots are confident they can win quickly.
We will own the skies up there.
Lieutenant, have you ever fought in combat before?
No, I haven't.
Does that bother you, considering the fact that you may now be called on to do that?
It doesn't bother me. I would like to have had that experience in my bag of tricks, if you will, knowing that I am potentially going into conflict. Nobody knows what it's like that hasn't been there to have a missile shot at them or a gun from the ground shot at them. I've never actually seen that smoke trail coming off another airplane heading towards my airplane. It's kind of like the butterflies you get in your stomach before the big game, but then once I think things kick off, it's going to be business as usual for us.
Anybody that thinks that the airplanes are going to go over there and have a free day of dropping bombs and shooting missiles and hit everything that they fire at like they're playing some sort of a Nintendo game is crazy. There are going to be lots of targets that are not going to be destroyed even if they are hit, and lots of targets that are not going to be hit unless you go after it many, many times.
If Iraqi missiles or aircraft are not destroyed, huge U.S. air bases in Saudi Arabia and American ships in the Gulf will be vulnerable to attack from Iraq's French-made Exocet missiles and Russian Scuds.
The things that the Allied forces need to worry about are Iraq's surface-to-surface missiles and the sort of warheads they could be putting on those missiles. You have Scud missiles and variants of the Scud missiles which have got a range up to about 500 miles. They can carry a high explosive warhead of up to 1 ton, but more worryingly they could carry either a chemical warhead of nerve gas or mustard gas, or possibly even fuel air explosive.
Fuel air explosives were developed in the United States. The technology was sold by private companies and arms dealers to Iraq.
A fuel air explosive warhead is like a poor man's tactical nuclear weapon. It's basically a little bit like a napalm charge, but you're firing a blanket of petroleum air mixture over about 400 or 500 yards, and then once that blanket is spread out, it's detonated, and it gives you tremendous blast and tremendous heat effects over that whole area, and the effect is totally devastating.
Iraq's threat to use chemical weapons is forcing American troops to face the possibility of gruesome casualties.
The type of casualties you get from chemical weapons are very nasty. It's not a clean casualty. You'll have someone coughing their lungs out. You'll have terrible blisters appearing on their skin. It's very demoralizing if you see that happening to a friend of yours.
Kevin, there's a sign. There you go.
Medics, who will have to treat and evacuate the wounded, are expecting the worst.
Those of us that have been and seen casualties and seen death and actually smelt and tasted war want no part of it. We haven't dealt in chemical biological warfare, and we're not sure what's going to happen. But we are prepared and are trained in the chemical treatment of patients and casualties.
Talk to me about these biological, what are we getting now? They're going to issue shots or vaccinations against anthrax. Have you heard anything about that? Have you gotten any instructions about that, or is that just for troops up north? No? Really?
Nothing to protect for anthrax.
Death cures anthrax.
Death cures anthrax. That's about the only thing it'll do.
Hopefully it'll be not too messy, but to say that it won't be messy, I think would be a very bad mistake.
Yeah,
it'll be messy.
One military analyst described it as, he said, surgery. This is amputation with a chainsaw.
That's about it.
Have each of you read over your wills?
Yes, sir.
Do the wills accurately reflect how you want your estate administered and divided following your death?
Yes, sir.
We'll have some final thoughts in just a moment.
Look at me, enjoying an apple, thanks to Super Polygrip.
Super Polygrip forms a seal that holds so tight, many denture wearers can enjoy more of their favorite foods.
Even apples.
Super Polygrip.
I'll never get through tomorrow. I don't get some Z's.
Introducing single-dose maximum strength Nitol. Just one will help you fall fast asleep fast. New maximum strength Nitol. Just one Nitol will help you get a lot of Z's.
Hey, the boots come a long way for one day.
without a hitch.
That's not what I hear.
What?
At the airport, someone swiped your wallet.
Oh, right.
What about your client dinner tonight? You know, you're sitting on the biggest order of the year.
Is Mr. Moore here?
I'm Chris Moore.
I've got you a replacement card in cash from American Express.
Thanks a lot.
How did you do that?
Only one card gives you the privileges of membership, the American Express card. Don't leave home without it.
This looks like something my mom would eat. It's kind of quiet, conservative. I don't think I can get into this. I mean, it's just a bunch of flakes. It doesn't taste the way it looks. I like the way it crunches. Maybe it's good because it's simple. Wait, don't tell me. I'm just like my mother.
Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Cornflakes?
Taste them again for the first time.
Some cars come and go, but every once in a while, they dance. Introducing the new G20 from Infiniti. A mid-size luxury sedan that offers lots of room, all the amenities, and a nimble spirit that's every inch an Infiniti. Care to dance?
Next, an incredible story.
They got her in the witness protection program.
Why has the government taken his daughter?
You can forget about seeing that kid.
Can he get her back in time?
I want to see my daughter.
Ed O'Neill and Mike Farrell. The whereabouts of Jenny next.
The verdict is in. USA Today finds equal justice stimulating entertainment.
Jury's great. Got him.
Citing solid writing and an equally attractive cast.
You are so gorgeous.
Get a taste of equal justice Wednesday.
Plus case history. Weirton Steel, an employee-owned company training workers for tomorrow with free college courses today.
Everything within this mill here will be computerized within the next year.
If I ever had to work on a computer and Weirton Steel, then I'll know what to do.
When I went back to work, I was more confident.
The worker has to be ready for tomorrow, always.
Call this number to find out about workplace literacy or to start a program at your company.
We began this hour by saying that questions lead to questions which only create questions. So we're going to leave you with some more, all of which may be on your mind already. But what if Saddam Hussein loses Kuwait but stays in power in Iraq? Will President Bush go beyond his stated objectives and invade Iraq? What happens if the U.S. prevails in Kuwait but there is still no peace? This brings up a long-term question. What if the U.S. is obliged to occupy Kuwait or stay on in Saudi Arabia? What happens if the Arab coalition falls apart? What happens if Iraq and Israel go to war and King Hussein of Jordan, in between them both, is swept away? And if Iraq is defeated, who fills the power vacuum in the Middle East? Remember, it wasn't that long ago that the U.S. supported Saddam Hussein to keep the Iranian revolution in check. If President Bush orders an attack, will he be setting events in motion he cannot control?
De Cuellar, the Secretary General, came back from 2.5 hours with Saddam Hussein deeply pessimistic.
Well, his pessimism, sometimes in political circles, that can be used for a useful purpose, but it seems in this case that what you see with him is what you get.
Well, that's right. He says that Saddam Hussein invited him, but had nothing to offer him, and what? War.
What about when the deadline passes, David? What is the UN prepared to do at that point? Will it continue to entertain what may be an endless series of peace proposals?
I think this building will remain busy, and there'll be all kinds of, yes, of flurries of proposals, but obviously under even more of a gun. The fighting could start at any time after that.
All right, ABC's David Ensor live at the United Nations this morning. There have been a variety of protests outside the UN, anti-war protests. Activists are on the march in cities all across this country right now. One of the biggest crowds was in Seattle. 20,000 people turned out to protest to move towards war. In Washington, D.C., protesters carried candles from the Iraqi embassy to the White House as they began an all-night prayer vigil for peace. ABC's Ann Compton is watching the deadline approach at the White House, and now she joins us live as well. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning, Mike. The White House had predicted publicly and privately for some time leading up to today's deadline that you would see this flurry of diplomatic activity in the final hours. The problem with many of the plans, the White House says, is they veer away from the UN guidelines, the UN resolutions, by putting some kind of condition on Iraq's withdrawal from Kuwait. President Bush delivered a particularly pessimistic, a particularly gloomy assessment to the leaders of Congress when they gathered here late yesterday. He not only sketched out for them where the final diplomacy had failed, but where war preparations are heading, and he signed into law the resolution that Congress gave him authorizing the use of military force. Democratic leaders left here yesterday saying it appears that the use of military force is now likely. And that's certainly the impression we got from the president's spokesman, Marlin Fitzwater, during his briefing yesterday, in which he described the nation's mood as one of deep concern and sober anxiety. As for the timing of a military strike